This might seem like an obvious point, but we forget about it when in the heat of, trying to grab on that next shiny object. And that is, innovation is a disciplined process.
Artificial intelligence dominates the headlines, making big promises, solving problems that have plagued humanity. It can get overwhelming and maybe a bit irrational. AI has demonstrated beacons of promise in many areas, but let's maybe temper the hyperbole. At least that's the recommendation from our guest on today's show. In the utilities sector, AI has heralded some beacons of promise from wildfire mitigation to DER integration. But let's take a step back. Are utilities truly solving their biggest challenges, or are they getting lost in the hype of the latest shiny object? Today, we're talking about AI fatigue, risk of chasing cutting-edge technology without solving real operational problems. Why do so many pilots stall? Why do CEOs start to lose faith in innovation programs? And most importantly, how can utilities move from chaos to clarity by aligning AI and technology investments with their real pressing challenges? And for our regular listeners, a quick reminder that our show is now captured in video and posted to YouTube, so be sure to check that out if you want to see the conversation. Now, to help us cut through the noise of AI fatigue, we're joined by Kim Getgen, founder and CEO of InnovationForce. Kim has spent her career making innovation more accessible, inclusive, and results-driven. At InnovationForce, her team is using AI not to create more distractions, but to help utilities focus, scanning thousands of pages of grid mod filings, identifying key challenges, and matching them to proven utility-grade solutions. I'm Jason Price, your host, coming to you from New York City, and with me, as always, is Matt Chester, Energy Central Community Manager and producer of this podcast, and coming to us all the way from Orlando, Florida. Matt, AI and grid modernization are no doubt among the hottest topics on the pages of Energy Central, but with so much happening, do you see people leaning into the hype, or are they skeptical?
Yeah, Jason, I think it's a bit of both. And honestly, that's what makes the conversation on Energy Central these days so exciting to follow. You got this wave of excitement where folks are eager to apply AI to everything from outage predictions to customer engagement. But then right alongside it, you see some very real caution, people questioning, is this solving our actual problem, or is it just another flashy pilot that's going to fall short of expectations? So it's a bit of a tug of war between potential and practicality, kind of like you mentioned. So the community is definitely talking about AI a lot. And increasingly, as we all get our hands on AI tools, they're becoming more common. That's leading the community to ask more pointed questions. They want results, not just ideas or proof of concepts. And I think that's what makes today's conversation perfectly timed, because that tension is definitely front and center.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And before we dive in, a big thank you to West Monroe, our sponsor of today's episode. Now, let's get started. Kim Getgen, welcome to Energy Central's Power Perspectives podcast.
I'm excited to be here, and this is going to be a fun topic, especially coming out of Distributech not too long ago. I kind of had my eyes open for all of the AI buzzwordness on the show floor, and it can be a little fatiguing to have AI in your face 24/7. What's it doing for me today?
Absolutely, and we're thrilled to have you here to talk about these things. So let's jump right into it. So Kim, as you mentioned, you're a DTech, so you're talking to utility industry professionals who represent a wide spectrum of roles and responsibilities, including some of those who may be charged with operationalizing AI in the business practice. So what do you say to this audience as the defining problem you see with AI?
Not getting the problem statement properly framed up before you start your AI pilot or experiment. That was the key. In fact, in one of my panels that I had the good fortune of participating on during Distributech, I was joined by Portland General Electric, Hema. Many of you may know Hema over at Portland General Electric. She is in the office of the CIO, and she runs a ton of these AI digital bot type projects. And the one thing that really came out on our panel was the importance of framing up problems and the why before you go off and attach to the fancy tech. You got to kiss a lot of frogs out there when you're trying to roll out new technology and in particular AI. So it's really important to understand what is the problem we're trying to solve, framing up AI as the solution to that problem, what it's going to do, what it's not going to do, being able to trial it and learn, and then make a decision on whether you're ready to go to production at scale. And so I would say to this audience, get ready to kiss a lot of frogs and get your challenge statements right.
So, how about this? Share with us some examples that you've come across where, the attractiveness of the tech has gotten, say, a little out of hand from where it should be actually identifying where and how it could lead to solutions. Just give us some anecdotes if you have any.
So I'm a total evangelist on technology. I might be turning into a little bit more of a skeptic or curmudgeon when I start to feel the fatigue on some of this. Like even me, the eternal optimist on technology, starting to feel a little like skeptical on some of the limits. I would say there's a lot of good art of possible that I've seen with this AI technology. And it's just a matter of right sizing what it is that you want to test and what it is that you're trying to do, um, versus, can it do everything that you think it's going to do today? And so a great example is wildfire. Okay. A lot of people are turning to AI to solve wildfire problems. And I think that's great. But then, let's take a step back. Let's peel that onion. What are we exactly solving and what are we expecting the technology to do? So when you think about AI solving a wildfire problem, it could be a monitoring system, a video camera monitoring system that's looking for fire or smoke, right? And it can intelligently detect that as an example. Or is it the humans detecting the smoke, or is it the AI detecting the smoke, or a combination of both? Right? The machine learning process and things are only going to get better as time goes on. So like putting the toe in the water is probably good, but be expected that, those systems are going to need to learn as they get better. But you could also solve the problem in another way. You could take a bunch of data from spreadsheets and you could start running AI across the data without ever hanging a video camera and maybe even get as good or better results at being able to predict where you think that wildfire might be next year. I've seen those solutions being used quite cost effectively, as well as delivering really accurate and great results. A third option could be, why don't we use wisdoms of crowds, third party data crowdsourcing, because our customers are already using Facebook and other means. They could be sending up pictures of smoke or wildfire that could be detected in seconds, right, by a third party crowdsourcing AI intelligence that could then tell the utility, hey, check it out, or maybe working with a wildfire camera to say, turn the camera here. That's another way of solving it with AI. And then finally, like we're also seeing some really smart sensors out there, and the ability to even detect potentially a conductor before it falls. The old engineering joke, if a conductor falls in a forest, no one's there to hear it. Well, unfortunately, in the case of wildfire, we actually need to know, if it falls and being able to detect it with a sense of urgency if we need to be able to shut off power. So those are all examples of solutions that we've seen, as ways to use AI to solve a very critical need. But each one of those is going to be different based on the utility, their OpEx, CapEx demands, their resources and ability to be able to roll out a solution, right? And so the right size fitting the right need is going to be important. And I think some patience and feedback is going to be required, because if you want to fine tune those algorithms, if you want AI to be working the way you need it to work in your service territory, you're going to need a partner with that vendor to make sure that it's delivering the accurate results you need. So you need to be an active participant in field trials and testing, and of course in supporting the vendor once it gets into production at scale. So yeah, I mean, of course, is the hype ahead? Sometimes it is. Is that necessarily always a bad thing? No, it's not. But if you really know the problem you're trying to solve, the options you have on the table, your willingness to have the appetite to pilot and learn and then work with your vendor, I think that the technology bones are there to be able to deliver the capabilities that utilities need that are going to get them better than what they have in the current state today.
Well, I'm glad you shared that because my next question, I'm really going to be curious how you answer this. So utilities are made up of very smart people, very dedicated, devoted people. The problems they face every year are pretty much the same problems they face every year. There's grid mod plans, there's IRPs, there's wildfire mitigation strategies, and so on and so forth. Where does AI fit into this? And why does it seem like these challenges continue to hide in plain sight?
So the challenges are hiding in plain sight. I think that's great way of framing it up. From what I've seen in working with utility professionals, many are working on roadmaps, strategic roadmaps to be able to deliver capabilities, and those capabilities may not be known amongst their peers. So if I'm in charge of this runway or this lane, I'm going to develop my technology roadmap and I'm going to move full speed ahead. But my peer to the left or to the right may be working on something somewhat similarly, and I didn't know. So I think there's a lot of confusion because we just don't know who's working on what. So I have argued a really good place to go and try to figure out who's working on what. And this is valuable if you're in a utility or if you're a supplier to a utility. Go read the grid mod report. Go read the integrated resource plan. Go read the wildfire mitigation plan or the EV, a lot of really good EV reports out there. Go read the public filings. We're in a regulated industry where we spend a lot of time and money having to write these filings. The problem is those filings can be long, and who has the time, if you're wearing an operational hat, to go back and read a 600-page filing and truly understand it? And if I'm a supplier and you're just one of maybe 20 or 30 utilities I'm working with, do I have time to read 1,500 pages from every single one of my utilities that I'm working with? So here is an opportunity for us to find those challenges that are hiding in plain sight by using AI. And this is something that I started doing, and I've productized it in InnovationWorks. Our InnovationWorks AI actually reads the filings to look for the challenges. And so instead of having to go through hundreds of pages of documents looking for the needle in the haystack, it is finely tuned to find the challenges that are hiding in plain sight. And so that is, I think, step one, and a really valuable tool that, instead of spending hours upon hours reading other people's plans, hours upon hours in a lot of conversations and roadmap reviews and trying to figure out who's working on what, why not take the documents we've already written? We've talked about the challenges that we have that we're trying to solve, and then be able to have those finely tuned challenge statements that are going to be distilled down to the problems that, we should be looking to pilot this year. And so I hope that started to answer your question. You might have a second one in there, but I'm thinking, this was a really frustrating point for me, and having to work with a lot of utilities at the same time, and being asked how to create strategic roadmaps of their challenges, and knowing that I couldn't scale myself to do that. This tool that we've created in InnovationWorks AI can read any filing, any PDF, any strategy document, and basically find the challenge and actually auto match it to commercially available solutions that are in our marketplace. A utility told me yesterday that they search for solutions now in InnovationWorks before they Google search. And that was music to my ears, because I think what we're really trying to deliver is a very catered experience that saves everyone time in what can sometimes feel like a niche industry where we can't get, an open marketplace of ideas or solutions available fast enough for us to solve our needs.
Yeah, the crossroads of AI and all the rate cases or helping organize and distill what matters most is, it's a very practical use of it. But okay, so you said a few things that triggered some questions or some thoughts. So let me ask you, maybe this is a two-parter. Utilities are conservative, they're risk averse, they rarely act without regulatory approval. So on one hand, are the regulators approving any of these decisions? And knowing how utilities are, why the heck are they even dabbling in AI? So it's a two-parter, but love to get your perspective on both.
Yeah, well, I want to jump right in on the dabbling with AI. Their utilities are dabbling with AI because they have to. We're all in this crossroads where we want to deliver a reliable service and a grid that needs to be modernized more urgently than ever before, and we're under OpEx constraints. So I think that AI can really come in here and solve a lot of the problems that we have. The question that utilities need to answer is, am I building AI or am I buying a solution that has AI in it? And this changes everything if you can really think about the AI as a build buy. So in some utilities, I'm seeing digital transformation teams that are fully coherent and trained up and staffed up and ready to go build their own AI tools, chatbots, for example, that would be able to respond to customer questions and easier and faster and maybe be able to deliver an overall customer experience because that data that the utility has is going to feel somewhat unique and they may not want to give it away and they may want to develop their own AI. On the other hand, there's probably areas where it would be better for the utility to just make a simple buy decision that they're going to go out and buy technology that is leveraging AI that is helping them solve this need right better. So if you think about AI as a build buy, a lot of what utilities do will be the buy. So innovation and AI becomes a procurement issue that utilities have to address. It's not even so much the technology development and support and all the security questions per se that come when you are going to build it yourself or maybe have fears of your employees using it yourself. It's going to get pushed to your supply chain, to procurement, and to innovation scouts that are out there helping the utility make buy decisions to solve their key problems where AI is embedded. And so, from that perspective, I think we need to realize that AI as a business decision is going to impact a lot more of the utility than you may have thought. It is not just going to sit in the silo of the CIO or the digital transformation team. It is going to bleed into the innovation team, your supply chain, and the folks that assess cybersecurity awareness. So maybe I'll stop there, but I think the most important thing, other than challenge statement creation, and I would want to get out in this podcast, it would be really understanding the build buy. What are you going to build? What are you going to buy? Well, perhaps there's three things. What do you want to build? What do you want to buy? And what do you want to allow your employees to use when it comes to AI?
All right, so we had on the show in the past a company called Copperleaf that has a planning tool, and they were discussing the use of AI in the planning tool. So I think that's an interesting parallel to my question to you, and that is, from a planning and a capital investment planning standpoint, they seem to have got a pretty practical tool that the market is adopting. All right. So from your assessment, though, AI can be both a problem and, to some degrees, maybe a solution. How does AI actually help utilities focus on going after the right problem? So it's not a planning issue. It's more of just a decision-making issue. How do you suggest that decision makers at utilities keep that AI focus on, as a sort of top of mind in their day-to-day activities? Do you have any thoughts around that?
Well, I would go back to, what problems are you solving with AI? And I think what you're pointing out with Copperleaf and having a planning tool that uses AI is a great example to what I was saying previously. AI is just going to become a piece of many products that you buy. It just is. I mean, utilities are going to buy a lot from their suppliers, and their suppliers are going to lean hard into AI. That's just the way it's going to be. And we found many of our, the suppliers have found really novel ways, great ways to be able to leverage AI to unleash solutions to the problems that utilities have. But if we aren't starting with the challenge statement, if we aren't solving the problem we really have, if we go back to just being stuck in shiny object syndrome, we are not going to have a very good AI strategy or program. And so, just like Copperleaf's use of AI in their planning tool, InnovationForce has been using AI to help utilities develop better problem statements. And so, if you can use AI to develop a better challenge as I mentioned, coming out of some of those grid mod filings, and then auto match it to the solutions that are available in a marketplace that could solve your problems. Imagine all the time you can now save when it comes to getting your SMEs involved in, should we be using this product A over product B, or maybe we should run trials of both for the learning so that we can then make the right decision before we go to production at scale. So yeah, I wanted to hit here more on the use of AI as an absolute time saver to get the first step in the jobs to be done right when it comes to innovating. And that is use AI to develop challenge statements, develop those challenge statements from the documentation you already have readily available in your utility. And then, leveraging tools like InnovationWorks, you could develop those challenge statements from your documents and do the auto matching in a marketplace of utility driven ideas that would help you find solutions faster.
Great. Kim, I want to ask you about I think you have a pretty interesting use case or test case, I guess you could say. If I understood correctly, you analyzed some 600 plus grid mod plans. What was the outcome of this? What were some of the top challenges utilities are facing, and how could AI address these?
Yeah, so we haven't analyzed that many yet, but we're on the path to do that. We have around 1,200 challenges right now available in our marketplace. So imagine our AI generating challenges, and we can do a couple of things with that. We can match a challenge to a solution in the marketplace. We could match a challenge to another challenge, and then that starts to develop trends. So now we can see 3 or 4 or 5 dozen utilities all trying to solve this vegetation management or wildfire problem. And on the other hand, we can match solutions. So if you're coming in as a supplier with a solution and you're like, hey, what challenges can I match? We can match that. So we're using AI to be able to generate challenges, match challenges to other challenges, challenges to solutions, and then reversing it, solutions can be matched to challenges. Some of the things that we're seeing as trends, though, by being able to ingest all this information, at the top of the list, battery storage, energy storage, batteries and energy storage seems to be a pretty consistent theme throughout the grid mod plans that we've read, or I'll use grid mod in air quotes because we're reading all kinds of different challenges, but they all kind of are trying to modernize the grid. So there's battery and energy storage, distributed energy resource integration and planning, seeing a ton in the DER space, virtual power plants. How are we going to be able to interconnect everything, manage it, control DER? So that's another big one. Wildfire and vegetation management clearly come up a lot as well in the plans that we've been reviewing. Cybersecurity, I'm starting to see a lot of cybersecurity challenges. And I would also say workforce management, with talent starting to retire, we have to rethink the future of work. And there's a lot of really great challenges and solutions that are coming in. That's another great use case for AI. But thinking about what's going to happen, if we see a lot of retirement and aging in a workforce, Gen Zers coming into the workplace, how are we going to be able to leverage and harness that talent? But also look at things like how can we reduce time, truck rolls, and improve safety? So that whole workforce piece, and we're seeing a lot of. And I think the final piece I would hit on would just be the management of data, period. How are you managing all this data? And when you think about managing the data, all the various formats it could potentially be in. So whether you're trying to solve a veg management and you have satellite data and files that aren't playing nice with other pieces of data, or you're sitting on a bunch of meter data, how are you going to manage all this data, get it organized, cataloged, and working in a data lake or on behalf of your utility?
No, absolutely. Each utility, especially for those with AMI, they're sitting on terawatts of data that's growing exponentially. How do you get your hands around it, and what role could AI serve in helping streamline some of that?
And I missed the obvious one. I should also have said the electrification of everything. The electrification of heating is a big one. Vehicles, leveraging air conditioning, heating efficiency. There's a resurgence of DR, so needs for DR or VPP. I kind of bucketed that in the DER trend, but I would call out the electrification of everything, this demand growth that's coming, and then the demand growth coming from not just the electrification of everything, but also data centers is clearly at the top of the list.
Yeah, I would agree. And also this database that you're building with this AI analysis of the grid mod plants. I mean, this could be really powerful because there's one thing that all the utilities struggle with is what is the rest of the country doing? What are you seeing in different regions? And so having this platform that you're developing and analyzing all the grid mod plans, it just would really give insight, maybe even accelerate some of the initiatives that utilities on one end of the country is thinking about because they know that, there's a utility in the other end of the country that's already done it. And that would help immensely. All right, very cool. But okay, so we have a thought leader here. Her name is Kim Getgen. So I want to, some of the things I've been reading about and stuff that you've published, you've talked about AI fatigue, right? You've also talked about pilot purgatory, this whole idea that, great ideas stall before reaching full deployment. In your view and experience, what's the secret to operationalizing innovation and not getting caught up in this no man's land that you described?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you're bringing this up because AI is going to get stuck there because if we don't give it a process. So, to avoid pilot purgatory, I leverage 20 years of research from my co-founder, Dr. Linda Hill, who's an HBS professor, and she looked at 150 organizations and really was studying, like what were the successful leaders of innovation getting right. And this might seem like an obvious point, but we forget about it when in the heat of, trying to grab on that next shiny object. And that is innovation is a disciplined process. So for innovation's a bit of a buzzword. Yeah, like if I could just have $1 for every time I saw someone talk about innovation and it ended up in like a brainstorming meeting with a bunch of post-it notes on a wall, I'd be a rich lady. I would be able to build more software and AI. It's not just that aha moment and it's important. I'm not going to say that idea generation isn't important, and innovation is clearly a human driven team sport, and we need to have that, what my co-founder calls creative abrasion. But we can't forget that it is also a disciplined process that needs to be standardized. And so when you think about how can utilities get out of pilot purgatory, I tip my hat to Portland General Electric. For those of you that don't know, Portland General Electric just published their 2024 Innovation Impact Report. You can Google it, but put Portland General Electric or the wrong PG, and E will show up. We want PGE, Portland General Electric, Innovation Impact, and you can read and download their report that they share on their process. And so they put together a process that looks like an air traffic control system where all the new ideas come into the hangar, which is also what we call in our InnovationWorks platform. We have our open marketplace called the hangar. And then ideas start to progress from the hangar into flight planning and taxiing a runway, all the way to getting launched into air. And so the testing is being done in the air, and then that test flight is landed, and it lands with the learnings, it lands with the results, and then those results can be shared across the organization. And so having a standardized disciplined process is really what cuts I think, people that are in purgatory versus those that are excelling. Portland, by just using the standardized process that employees can understand, they're piloting 62% faster. My data, my estimate is that's saving them $560,000 per idea cycle. And what's really cool about all of this is not just like that they're doing it faster. Sometimes their pilots take longer and they need to. But it's the fact that they found that 50% of the pilots that went through the process are getting greenlit to production at scale. That number was unheard of. And so imagine now 50% of the pilots that you run get a decision 62% faster and are moving to scale. The ROI and impact that that's driving for that utility Like I couldn't get to those numbers yet, but they do share some of them in the report across the various ideas. That is the value that gets delivered as the result of having a standardized innovation process. Portland is not in pilot purgatory. Portland is driving ideas to impact, and that's driving real benefits for them, real bona fide OPEX savings. They're investing CapEx into the right projects. And over time, they'll be able to trace back all the improvements that they were able to deliver back to their customers, how much more reliable power is going to be able to be generated, but also that they were, moving some of these ideas as first movers. But they did it in a way that wasn't so risky. Like their regulators should be very proud of Portland because they're doing it in a way that is being done with a standardized process and they're leveraging their peers. So they're learning across an ecosystem. They have a standardized process and they're sharing those learnings back with their peers so that we can all innovate and run with ideas a little bit faster rather than being afraid of going first.
Okay. Well, Kim, you're a believer in the use of AI if it's done appropriately, if it's done smartly and implemented intelligently. And Portland General Electric is a great example. How do you think utilities should approach AI today into the future?
I think about AI, just to summarize a lot of what we've been talking about, approach it from the challenge you're trying to solve first. So instead of leading with AI as a shiny object, go back to what are the challenges my utility's trying to solve? Develop really strong problem statements for those challenges that you're trying to solve. And then as you start to think through what solutions are available, you're going to see like old school solutions. I like to call those kind of like current state ways of working. And then you're going to see more and more new, more modern solutions that are leveraging AI. And so by running the challenge, matching it to the solutions that you may want to field test, running a rapid field trial to learn what's going to come out of the piloting process is going to inform, I think, executives on what they should be doing in AI, and sometimes trying to decide if they should be buying or building. I spent some time in Silicon Valley 20 years ago. Back then, it was not uncommon to have teams competing against each other, even at the same companies, to try to deliver, like, what do we think, which outcome would be best? I'm now starting to see utilities think about this. Let's have a team go try and build something with their own AI, and we'll compare it to perhaps a commercial off the shelf solution and see, which one's going to pilot better. And we'll pick based on what pilot better, what's the better result that someone will go with. And sometimes we're going to go with our team because they built something better, and sometimes we're going to go with the off the shelf solution, and sometimes we're going to say, holy smokes, I don't even want to maintain that solution. I'm definitely going to buy it, but I'm going to partner pretty hard with the vendor to make sure that they're developing what I need on their roadmap.
Yeah, that makes sense. The build versus buy conundrum seems to permeate throughout the industry. Utilities are always looking at, do we make this investment internally, or do we look out into the market and try to make the best use of it given their unique nuances and conditions of that specific utility? So totally get it. So Kim, I mean, clearly you're really at the top of your game here and really understand what's going on in this space, and I no doubt there's going to be a lot more need for people like you and anyone listening who is just entering the industry. There's seems to be a world of opportunity in the AI space as it relates to our energy and power systems in this country. So you're basically future proofing your career in some respects. And I encourage people to reach out to Kim when they get the chance and continue that conversation. And Kim, although we're going to give you the final word, but we do want to shift for a moment to what we call the lightning round, which gives us an opportunity to learn a little bit more about you, the person, rather than you, the professional. So I'm going to throw a set of questions at you. Keep your response to one word or phrase if you're able to. And so that's it. So are you ready?
I guess so.
So let's counter some of the skepticism. Are there any AI tools or applications that you've implemented into your daily work habits?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes. 1,000% yes. The precursor to what I built that's available in InnovationWorks AI started with me using ChatGPT to basically run document by document and looking at filings to try to drive challenges. And so I would highly recommend anyone listening to this podcast to give it a try. Whether you want to use InnovationWorks AI to generate challenges or you just want to do it on your own, just do it. I think that it is a huge time saver, and just kind of the missing link that we have in the field, the jobs to be done in the field of innovation, because it's really hard to start from a blank sheet of paper to generate challenges. And so to start from something that's intelligent, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, whatever your LLM of choice is, give it a whirl. Ask it if it could generate challenges from your documents, and see if you can start to teach and train it on how to write great problem statements. Or just look me up and I'll help you. Be happy to help anybody on listening to the podcast who wants to pick my brain on that a little further on some good prompts and how to teach their AI to generate challenges.
All right, so you're using AI to speed up a lot of things, but you don't necessarily have all this free time now, right? You still have other work to do. So, what's your favorite way to unwind after a long day in the office?
So on that, everybody who knows me probably knows that I live with my retired parents. This beautiful backdrop is actually my mom's craft room, which is where I work most days when I'm at home, working on Innovation Force. But I spend my evenings with my retired parents. My dad, who was with me at Distributech, so some of you may have seen, I took a selfie of my dad and I from the floor. My dad worked as a project manager, but was in building automations and controls most of his career. And we had a really awesome bonding experience with him pointing out, the different types of technology that he used throughout his career. But he and I like to do a mean happy hour, and he likes to get cooking. And he calls himself a little bit of a, he calls himself Hobo Leo. And he likes to make food and make it accessible, almost like the way I'm trying to democratize innovation and make it accessible to everybody. My dad tries to, cook this really good food, and it doesn't have to be so fancy, but it can taste really great. And yeah, I was actually encouraging him to try to do a YouTube station or something, and well, I'm close. We'll see if I can do it. All my friends watch his videos and they love it. So yeah, that's what I do in my evenings.
All right, so you're cooking a big meal. You're going to have a dream dinner party. So, who would you invite? Who from your a guest from the past or present or future? Who would you invite to this dinner party?
Clearly my dad, because he's going to be cooking, so he's going to have to be there. Um, and then, like, I think on my wish list, I would invite Dolly Parton. So everybody who knows me knows that I am a huge, huge, huge uh, Dolly Parton fan. I think she's just one of those creative, brilliant minds in our generation. And I think it'd be super fun to have Dolly sitting with like Thomas Edison and Steve Jobs, who often, get compared neck and neck for being the most innovative um, of our lifetimes, or of our modern history. So I would have Dolly, I would have my dad, I would have Steve Jobs, Thomas Edison. I would definitely have my co-founder, which makes me think about Stevie Wonder. So one of her first case studies when she taught at Harvard, I think, was on Motown and Stevie Wonder. And so I would love to have a couple musicians, so Dolly and Stevie, and a leader like a Nelson Mandela would be amazing. And let's see, and I would love an athlete. And I'm a Commanders fan, and I am obsessed with Jaden Daniels. And when we were just talking about Gen Zers and the young folks coming into the workforce, I think we could all learn something from this kid. He is the internal optimist. right? Hard work, discipline, internal optimist. And I think he would be fun to have at the dinner party and could teach some of us old dogs a lot of new tricks.
All right, very cool. Well, what we do is we have something called lightning round questions where we ask past podcast guests to ask future guests a question. So I had the pleasure of visiting Jerry Narcia, the CEO of DT Energy in Detroit, back in January. And we posed this question to him. So he's asking the following: what are the 3 or 4 characteristics of a CEO that you think are important in today's world of ever-changing dynamics, other politics, technology, and so on?
I would come at it through the lens of being a leader of innovation. Um, and so I would want to focus on some of those attributes that I think would be helpful for utility CEOs that are trying to lead more innovative teams through what can sometimes feel like the scary unknown. So I would say lean hard into the strength of empathy. Um, so being able to empathize and create cultures where of empathy would be good, as well as active listening and curiosity. Um, I, I am trying to learn this. I am such a doer, and it's hard for me to take a moment sometimes to get curious and listen because I'm go, go, go. But I think that the most successful are probably leaning harder into their listening skills and having an open mindset of curiosity. And then I would probably end with empowerment. So, in my line of work, when I see successful innovation leadership, it's usually because they have empowered, they're not the ones driving the idea. They've empowered their front line. They've empowered their frontline employees to be participating in a process of innovating, bringing their great ideas into the program. So I would say empower, empathize, be curious, and listen.
Okay, so next question is actually now the table's turning to you where you can ask the question. So what challenging question you'd like to pose to a future guest? And of course, it can be topical and related to energy, or it can be an off-the-wall question. It's really your call.
I think I would ask, about innovation. And my question would be, what are 3 things you could do to help your utility innovate or your organization be more innovative?
All right, and then we ask the same question to many of our guests. So here it goes. What are you most motivated by?
Well, the reason why I started Innovation Force was really to be the bridge. I'm motivated by engineers. And I'm motivated by human ingenuity. And so, you know, my generation, I think, has really been impacted by this whole changing climate, changing energy needs, but the art of possibility of being able to transform our energy portfolio and drive this transition, modernizing a grid that hasn't been modernized really for 150 years. And I think we stand at a really interesting precipice. It's historic. So for folks that are in the energy industry, I like to say you're in the right place at the right time. Don't worry about the people queuing up around the block to go get the latest iPhone. Like, you are driving historic change right now.
Well, we're going to give you the final word, the last note to the audience here. So giving you the final word, and that knowing that, AI is the topic and our audience, I mean, first of all, AI is just continues to dominate the headlines pretty much everywhere and anywhere in every field possible. So it's just, we're only scratching the surface right now. We're in the terms of Jeff Bezos, we're still at day 0, right? We're still we're still got a long way to go. All right. With that in mind, we've got an audience of listeners. They're going to be attending conferences, webinars. They're going to be thinking about and talking about AI as a tool in their daily practice and all that. So what do you want them to keep in mind? What questions should they be asking the presenters? And also, what questions should they be asking themselves as we conclude here about AI?
Gosh, I would go back to, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? I would be thinking about how would I test something like this, right? So, my words of advice would be completely inspired. If you see something that sparks interest, that's awesome. But then I would quickly pivot to what is the problem that this idea that's inspired me, what could it solve? And then, practically I would be really thinking through that test plan. How do I go and experiment with this new idea that has inspired me that can be tested in a way that I can sell it and get others on board with it, or just at least learn from it because the value's in the learning. So, yeah, I mean, go to these conferences, follow your interest, see what sparks your interest, and then during the presentation, really be thinking through like, what are the challenges this could solve for us? And how in the heck would I pilot this in a quick way to get others on board with this concept?
That's great, Kim. I really, I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of activity on this after this podcast is published. People are going to have a lot of questions and they're going to be posting a lot of comments on the platform. So when they do, we'll flag them and send them over to you, Kim, to make sure that you keep the conversation going. But until then, we really want to thank you today for sharing this insight on the podcast.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
Fantastic. We're thrilled to have you. And make sure that we catch up maybe a year from now. Check in on things and see them developing. How does that sound?
I'll make the shrimp boil.
Okay. And you can always reach Kim through the Energy Central platform where she welcomes your questions and comments. And we also want to give a shout out of thanks to the podcast sponsors that made today's episode possible. Thanks to West Monroe. West Monroe is a leading partner for the nation's largest electric, gas, and water utilities, working together to drive grid modernization, clean energy, and workforce transformation. West Monroe's comprehensive services are designed to support utilities in advancing their digital transformation, building resilient operations, securing federal funding, and providing regulatory advisory support. With a multidisciplinary team of experts, West Monroe offers a holistic approach that addresses the challenges of the grid today and provides innovative solutions for a sustainable future. And once again, I'm your host, Jason Price. So plug in and stay fully charged in the discussion by hopping into the community at energycentral.com. And we'll see you next time at the Energy Central Power Perspectives Podcast.